A quiet walk near a hotel, an unexpected conversation, and a young man's honesty that followed me longer than I ever expected. Sometimes the smallest moments leave the deepest marks. Before I begin, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love knowing where these stories are traveling. And if you enjoy thoughtful, real-life inspired stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. It truly helps more than you know. Now, let me tell you what happened. I never thought a simple walk could stay with me the way this one did. I was in my early 50s at the time, staying at a modest hotel just outside my neighborhood while some repairs were being done on my house. It was one of those places that tried its best to feel welcoming, with soft yellow lights along the walkway and a lobby that smelled faintly of coffee and clean linen. In the evenings, I liked to walk to clear my head. Life had felt heavy lately, not dramatic, just full. The kind of full that leaves no quiet space for your own thoughts. That evening, the air was warm but gentle, and the sky was painted in those soft, fading colors that always make me slow my steps. I had just passed the side entrance of the hotel when I heard someone say my name, carefully, as if unsure it was really me. I turned and saw my neighbor's son. I had known him since he was a boy riding his bike up and down our street, always polite, always quick with a wave. Now he stood taller, his posture a little uncertain, his hands tucked into the pockets of a light jacket. He explained he was helping his parents with something nearby and had spotted me by chance. We exchanged the usual words at first. "How are you? How's your family?" The kind of conversation people have when they share history, but not closeness. Then, without planning to, we began walking in the same direction, toward the quiet road that wrapped around the back of the hotel. The sounds of traffic faded, replaced by crickets and the distant hum of an air conditioning unit. The sidewalk was narrow, edged with trimmed bushes and small ground lights that made long shadows. I noticed how he kept a respectful distance, matching my pace without crowding me. It was a small thing, but it mattered. At some point, he laughed softly and said he felt strange running into me like this, as if time had folded in on itself. That honesty opened something. We began talking more freely, not about big achievements or plans, but about how life doesn't always turn out the way you imagine when you're young. He spoke about feeling unsure, about wanting to do right by people, about carrying expectations that weren't always his own. I listened, really listened. Not as a neighbor, not as someone older who had advice ready, but simply as another human being walking beside him under the dim hotel lights. I found myself sharing small truths too, about learning to sit with uncertainty, about how strength often looks quieter than we expect. There was no rush in the conversation, no hidden meaning, just two people meeting each other honestly for a brief stretch of road. When we reached the corner where our paths would separate, he stopped and thanked me for listening. He said it meant more than I probably realized. His words were simple, but they landed deeply. We wished each other well, and he turned back the way he came. I stood there for a moment after he left, the night air cool against my skin, feeling changed in a way I couldn't fully explain. As I walked back toward the hotel, I realized it wasn't the walk itself that stayed with me. It was the reminder that sincerity, when offered freely and respectfully, can bridge years, roles, and expectations. That night, as I lay in the quiet room, I understood something new about connection. Sometimes it arrives unannounced, walks beside you for a while, and leaves you with more clarity than you had before. The days after that walk felt quieter, but not empty. It was the kind of quiet that invites reflection, like a room after guests have left, and you finally notice what was said. I returned to my routines, morning coffee by the window, small errands, evenings at the hotel desk chatting briefly with the clerk who always asked how my day had been. Yet, Every so often, my mind drifted back to that stretch of sidewalk and the way an honest conversation had unfolded without effort. I saw him again 2 days later. It was late afternoon, the sun slanting low and warm, turning the hotel's pale walls into soft gold. I was sitting on one of the benches near the entrance, reading, but not truly absorbing the words. He approached slowly, giving me time to notice him before he spoke. That consideration, again, stood out. We greeted each other easily this time, without the hesitation of surprise. He asked if he could sit, and when I nodded, he chose the far end of the bench, leaving space between us. We talked about ordinary things at first. The weather shifting, the way the neighborhood had changed over the years, how strange it felt to see familiar places through older eyes. Then he paused, looking straight ahead instead of at me, and said he had been thinking about our walk. So had I. He explained that he wasn't used to being heard without interruption or judgment. He said it felt grounding, like someone had briefly held a mirror up without trying to fix the reflection. I felt a gentle warmth at his words, not pride exactly, but gratitude. Life doesn't always give us clear moments where we know we mattered to someone, even briefly. I told him that listening had helped me too. That sometimes, when you reach a certain age, people assume you're finished growing, finished learning. But hearing his perspective reminded me that curiosity doesn't fade unless we let it. We decided to walk again, this time along a slightly longer path that curved behind the hotel toward a small pond I hadn't noticed before. The water was still, reflecting the sky like a sheet of glass. Ducks drifted near the edge, unbothered by our presence. The world felt slowed down, as if granting us permission to take our time. As we walked, he spoke more openly about his worries, not in a heavy way, but thoughtfully. He wondered aloud how to balance being responsible with staying true to himself. I shared stories from my own life, moments when I'd chosen safety over passion, and others when I'd taken risks that shaped who I became. There was a subtle tension, not of attraction or unease, but of awareness. We both seemed conscious that this connection was unexpected and needed care. Mutual respect guided every step, every word. That awareness made the conversation richer, more intentional. When we reached the pond's edge, we stopped. The air smelled faintly of water and grass. He thanked me again, this time with a small, earnest smile. I realized then that what stayed with me wasn't just his honesty, but the way he offered it without demand. No expectations, no pressure, just truth. As we walked back, I felt something shift inside me. A reminder that connection doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, asks only for presence, and leaves you more aware of your own capacity for understanding. That evening, back in my room, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. I wrote about listening, about boundaries, about how meaningful encounters don't need to be dramatic to be profound. I slept deeply that night, carrying with me a sense that something had begun, not an event, but a process of seeing more clearly. By the third week, the hotel no longer felt temporary. I knew which floorboard near the vending machine creaked, which time of evening the lobby grew quiet, and which chair by the window caught the last light of day. It surprised me how quickly places can become familiar when you allow yourself to settle into them. I hadn't seen him for several days, and I hadn't expected to. Our meetings were never planned, never promised. Still, when I noticed his absence, I felt it gently, the way you notice a song hasn't come on the radio in a while. You don't miss it exactly, but you're aware of the silence it leaves behind. One evening, as I walked the longer path behind the hotel alone, I realized something important. I wasn't replaying our conversations to analyze them. I wasn't imagining what might come next. Instead, I was thinking about myself, about how open I had felt. about how rare it was at my age to speak without shaping my words to fit expectations. That awareness stayed with me. The next time I saw him, it was raining lightly, the kind of rain that barely makes a sound but leaves everything smelling clean. He stood under the hotel's overhang, looking out at the parking lot as if deciding whether to wait it out or step into it. When he noticed me, his face softened with recognition, and I felt that same quiet ease return. We didn't walk that night. We stayed where we were, listening to the rain hit the pavement. Conversation came slowly at first, thoughtful pauses stretching between sentences. He told me he'd had a difficult talk with his father, one that left him questioning himself. I listened, not interrupting, not rushing him forward. I could tell he needed space more than advice. When he finished, I said something simple. That clarity often comes after discomfort, not before. That growth rarely announces itself. He nodded, as if those words settled somewhere he needed them to land. Then he asked me a question I hadn't expected. He asked how I knew when I was living honestly. The question stayed in the air between us. I took my time answering. I told him that honesty, for me, wasn't about saying everything, but about not betraying myself in silence, about allowing my inner voice to be part of my decisions, even when it whispered instead of shouted. He listened the way people do when they're truly present. No shifting, no checking the time, just attention. In that moment, I felt a gentle responsibility, not a burden, but a care. I was aware of the difference in our stages of life, aware that trust should always be handled carefully. That awareness didn't diminish the connection. It protected it. When the rain slowed, he stepped back slightly, creating space without being asked. He thanked me again, but this time I stopped him gently. I told him that conversation is shared ground, not a gift given one way, that I had gained as much as he had. He smiled at that, a real smile, unguarded. Later that night, lying awake, I understood something I hadn't before. This experience wasn't about him, not entirely. It was about rediscovering a part of myself that listens without armor, a part that engages without expectation. I thought about how easily we close ourselves off as years pass, convincing ourselves we've already learned what we need to know. That night, I realized learning doesn't stop. It simply becomes quieter, more selective. And somewhere in that realization, I felt myself growing again. In the days that followed, a calm settled over our brief encounters, a rhythm neither of us forced but both of us recognized. I began to notice the little ways he carried himself, the careful thought in his gestures, the way he paused before speaking as if weighing his words for their truth. It reminded me that honesty is rarely loud. Sometimes it lives quietly in the spaces between sentences, in the respect we show one another simply by being present. One afternoon, I was leaving the hotel lobby when I saw him near the fountain at the far end of the courtyard. Sunlight dappled the water, scattering light across the stones. He waved, and I felt the familiar warmth of recognition, of shared understanding. I joined him on the edge of the fountain, letting the soft trickle of water fill the silence before conversation began. He spoke about plans, not the grand ambitions of youth, but the small choices that shape daily life. Returning to a book he had abandoned, helping a neighbor with a garden, taking time to notice moments like this. He confessed he felt more confident simply because someone had listened to him without judgment. I told him that I felt the same way, that the courage to speak honestly often comes when someone offers a safe space to do so. We wandered together along the pathway that curled around the hotel gardens, the air carrying the scent of flowering shrubs and recently mown grass. Our words flowed naturally, from light observations to reflections on life's unexpected turns. There was no agenda, no pressure, only the steady rhythm of two people moving through space and time, aware of each other in a meaningful, respectful way. At one point, he paused near a wooden bench shaded by a maple tree. He turned to me with that earnest expression I had come to recognize and said something that stayed with me long after our conversation ended. "I think we're all looking for someone who sees us clearly, even if just for a moment." I nodded, and without responding immediately, I watched the sunlight shift across the courtyard, noticing the beauty in ordinary things, the rough texture of the tree bark, the gentle ripple of the fountain, the way the world continued to move around us. That moment, though simple, carried weight. It was a reminder that connection doesn't need drama to matter. It doesn't need noise to be profound. When it was time to part ways, we walked back slowly to the hotel entrance. He thanked me once more, but there was no awkwardness, no need to insist on gratitude. I understood then that the true gift had been the honesty and care we had shared, neither of us taking more than the other could give. As I returned to my room that evening, I reflected on the weeks of quiet walks, conversations, and shared silences. I realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters leave the deepest impact, not because they are extraordinary in outward terms, but because they touch the parts of us that rarely get attention, the parts that listen, reflect, and remember. I slept that night with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months, knowing that human connection can be both delicate and enduring. His honesty, his presence, had reminded me that life's richness often hides in subtle moments of truth and understanding. And I carried that lesson with me long after our paths had diverged, aware that the quiet integrity of shared experience is one of the most profound gifts life offers. In the end, it wasn't just about a walk or a conversation. It was about remembering what it means to be seen, and in turn, to truly see someone else. It was about respect, reflection, and the gentle, lasting power of honesty. Even now, when I pass that hotel, I smile softly, remembering a young man's quiet courage and the unexpected, enduring connection we shared.